Chapter 47. Siddle said, "We don't know where the doll is now, and we don't have time to catch the thief. We might as well quickly make another one and sacrifice it to the water god to avoid making him angry." The village chief looked at Siddle thoughtfully and suddenly said, "You're not a Baruna villager, you're an outsider." Oh. Why did this old man's eyes suddenly improve? Siddle's heart was pounding, her appearance was calm and composed, her words were sincere and earnest. "This doesn't matter. Isn't the most important thing now to make another sacrificial doll?" The village chief naturally didn't ask about her identity, but replied, "Then what do you have?" "Siddle, do you know Slender Man?" Compared to that weak sacrificial doll named Siddle, Slender Man is tall, has a majestic aura, and has 8 tentacles. I believe that the water god will like Slender Man more than Siddle. Village chief, but the doll you mentioned isn't here right now. His eyes were gloomy as he said, "If we want to make a new doll, we need to find a tailor in the East Village and a painter in the West Village. We need a humanoid figure, a bowl." Siddle's hair stood on end as he heard this, interrupting the village chief's words, waving his hand domineeringly. "There's no need to go through all that trouble, there's no need to find something like a humanoid figure to make a new doll. Isn't Slender Man right in front of the village gate? There's a ready-made one, and it's still warm too." After hearing Siddle's words, the village chief looked doubtful. "Is what you said true? Is he really at our village gate?" Siddle nodded, then put his arm around Jacqueline's shoulder and pulled her over. Despite the girl's frightened expression of not wanting to have anything to do with her at this moment, she resolutely said, "He likes this child the most. He chased us all the way from our hometown. He is definitely still waiting at the village gate now. As long as everyone opens the door, there is no need to think of a way. He will go in to find this child. At that time everyone can trick him here to sacrifice him." Hearing Siddle's words, Jacqueline's face gradually turned pale. The village chief pondered for a moment and then said, "Although you are an outsider, thank you for the news. I will lead my villagers to the village gate to check." He said so and was about to leave when Siddle stopped him. "Although I am really a kind and enthusiastic person, giving wholeheartedly without expecting anything in return, I am still willing to give everyone a sacrificial doll to solve everyone's emergency situation anyway." Siddle paused, his face showing no expression, but his eyes clearly showed dissatisfaction and condemnation. It seemed to say, "You guys are too ungrateful." "Village chief, I don't have any requests," Siddle sighed. "We are just lost tourists, just hoping for a way out of here and back home." The village chief said, "There is no way to leave Baruna village. However, the nearby Freya village might have a way for you to go home." Siddle, "Then how do we get to Freya?" The village chief, "Let's go along this small road, just go straight and you will reach Freya." He pointed out a road to Siddle, "Just go straight ahead." Originally it was just a flat grassland, but suddenly a cobblestone road grew out. Siddle, "Oh haha. It seems like the story has ended and the next map can be entered." Even though she can't leave the game, at least there is progress, and she doesn't know if the water god can hold back Slender Man. Siddle no longer dawdles and hurried forward. The village chief led the group of people in black cloaks towards the village gate. When she set foot on this small road, an indescribable feeling arose in Siddle's heart. She remembered the doll and the game console, so she took them out. The screen of the TS handheld game console went black. Siddle pressed it twice. Seeing that there was no movement, she stuffed it back into her arms. As for the doll, she didn't know what kind of skin this cold doll was made of. It was only the size of her palm. Someone used a crayon to draw yellow hair, red lips, 2 blue dots for eyes. The quality of the workmanship was poor, and it was also very ugly. Siddle held up the doll and remembered what a person in a black cloak had said earlier. There are very few dolls as beautiful as this one. So the dolls they had sacrificed to the water god before were even uglier than this one. Was the water god really not angered by such an ugly doll? Or was that water god's aesthetic sense only this bad? If the water god really liked such ugly things, then perhaps sacrificing Slender Man was the right decision. Siddle turned the doll over, seeing a few words written on the back. Siddle. Siddle. Her mood was quite complicated at the moment. She considered for a while, then stuffed the ugly little Siddle into her arms. After all, she had a hard time stealing it from the altar, so she might as well bring it with her first. Who knows, maybe she'll have a use for it later. She and Jacqueline were walking on the road when they suddenly heard a light wind. Could it be that they were about to reach Freya village? However, when Siddle listened carefully, she realized that the wind was coming from behind. A feeling of unease rose in her heart, and before she could turn around, she quickly grabbed Jacqueline and shouted, "Run!" Jacqueline was startled, and before she could react, Siddle had already pulled her forward. She heard the noise behind her, and turned her head to see Slender Man slowly approaching not far away. The tall, thin, faceless man in a suit walked on the small path, taking up almost all the space. Behind him, several tentacles were waving like snakes, gliding forward, making a sound of tearing wind. It was just that he originally had 8 tentacles, but for some reason, 2 of them were broken off, leaving only 6, so a gap was missing behind his bald shoulder, which looked a bit funny. Jacqueline. Her face immediately turned pale. As she ran, she looked at Siddle. "It's Slender Man. He's chasing us." "Siddle, I know it's him," she coldly said. "The people of Baruna village and the ghosts they worship are all useless." It hadn't even been 10 minutes since it was stopped. It was too useless. Jacqueline. Just now it was still Lord Water God, and now it had turned into a ghost. Actually, they weren't that useless. At least Slender Man had lost a few tentacles and seemed to have lost his sense of balance, but even though it was limping, it still tried to catch up with the 2 people in front. Jacqueline turned her head to look again. The tentacles were gradually approaching. She said in panic, "It's almost catching up." Siddle raised her head to glance, not knowing when this small path would end, and Slender Man behind was about to catch up. She half closed her eyes. When she opened them she had returned to a calm state, looking at Jacqueline. "Do you still have your phone?" Jacqueline nodded blankly, "Yes." "All right," Siddle instructed the girl, "let's split up first, run as far as possible, try to avoid it. After you're safe, send me a message, tell me your location, and see if I can go find you." There was a dark and gloomy area beside the road. Siddle didn't know what would happen after entering it, but right now Slender Man was behind her. She could only avoid this monster first. "It's now." Siddle suddenly stopped, leaving a sentence for Jacqueline, then turned and ran to the side of the small path. Jacqueline was stunned. She looked at that dark area and couldn't help but shiver, wanting to run after her, but then remembered Siddle's words to her to run away. After a moment of hesitation, she quickly ran in the other direction. The tentacles wriggled to where the 2 girls disappeared. The tall and thin faceless man slowly walked forward. The tentacles behind him waved in the air. The place where the limb was severed dripped mucus. It stopped for a few seconds, chose a direction and chased after. Siddle walked in the quiet darkness. She couldn't see her surroundings clearly. The torch was originally in her hand, but after entering here, it somehow went out. The unknown was often the greatest danger, so Siddle walked extremely fast. She had originally prepared herself to collide with the demons, but she didn't know if she had chosen the right direction. But Siddle quickly saw a ray of light. She slowed down, hesitantly walking towards the light, faintly hearing cheerful music coming from it. There seemed to be the sound of doves flapping their wings. Was this Freya village ahead? Siddle stopped for a few seconds in front of the light and walked in. No matter what happened, she had no way back. In the dark and damp forest, Jacqueline did not dare to stop, and kept charging forward. The torch in her hand had long gone out, but Jacqueline still held the stick tightly. At the crucial moment, this wooden stick could be used for self-defense. Without a companion, Jacqueline walked alone in the darkness, only able to hold the wooden stick tightly in her hand, trying to remember how Siddle gently swung the crowbar, to give herself more courage. After running for a while, the little girl felt a little tired, so she could only slow down, turn her head and look fearfully. Not seeing that tall and thin figure, she could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Jacqueline knew that Slender Man's target was her. But why hasn't he caught up yet? Has he gone to find Siddle or? Jacqueline's mind was in a mess. She took 2 more steps and tripped over something and fell to the ground. She screamed in pain in a low voice. Her cell phone fell from her pocket, landing on the stone tablet beside her. A faint green light flashed in the darkness. Jacqueline was horrified to find that she had tripped over a ruined tombstone. She groped to get her phone back. Just as she was about to endure the pain and stand up, she raised her head and was faced with a lifeless face. Rotten flesh hung from her face, empty eyes without pupils quietly looked down at her. This seemed to be a person who had died long ago. The pupilless ghost stretched out its rotten hands, its white bony fingers grabbing Jacqueline. Jacqueline held a wooden stick in one hand, and a cell phone in the other. In extreme fear, her legs trembled to the point of being weak, as if she had lost all the strength to stand up. Siddle stepped into that area of light, as if she had entered another world in a second. A world completely different from the cold and damp forest behind her. This was a small town filled with the chirping of birds and the scent of flowers. A few children were playing on the flower-filled lawn, and on the branches of the trees were several fluffy birds as round as balls. The bright, warm sunlight seemed to be able to dispel the coldness on her body. Siddle took 2 steps forward, hearing the noisy sounds of children playing. Today is a big day. That's right, another child added, it's a very big day. Although the children were laughing happily, Siddle felt that something was wrong. Could it be that another village like Baruna was performing a sacrificial ceremony for the afterlife? Siddle pondered for a while, and did not forget to take out her cell phone to see if Jacqueline had sent her a message. Jacqueline's lack of movement made Siddle a little worried. Although Jacqueline hated her, she really did not make any big mistakes, and if she could save Siddle, she would still help out. It was just that she could not go back to find Jacqueline now, and she did not know if Slenderman was still behind. Siddle could only continue walking forward, preparing to see what the plot of the game in this village was. She walked around a flower bed and saw an old man with a white beard smiling and welcoming her. Welcome here. You are also a girl who came here because you admire our reputation, right? I hope Freya will not disappoint you. Siddle. She didn't know how to answer, so she could only cautiously say, I just heard the kids say that today is a very important day. The old man smiled and said, that's right, there's a couple getting married in the church today. Every year, many girls who long for a happy wedding come to visit here, he said with a laugh. Isn't that what you came here for, little girl? This is the famous love village of Freya. Whoever gets married here will have eternal happiness. Siddle. I really don't dare hide anything from you. On the game console I only saw 3 words: Nanisher no game, die after 7 days. There were no words related to love here. But at least now Siddle knew where that cheerful sound that she heard faintly came from. The church was filled with melodious and cheerful wedding music.